Okay, this is a video about sound dampening the cab area in the Next. I found with our previous leisure travel van, Sprinter, that sound dampening was a must. Otherwise it was just too noisy to enjoy driving. And this proved to be pretty much the same, and we expected it. And before we bought the Next, we anticipated that we would go ahead and do the soundproofing we did and learn some things from our past go around about 6 or 7 years ago to what we did today. So I'm going to walk through kind of what we did. It's going to be pretty amateurish video here, but it'll get across what we've done and what we found to be successful. And then I'll show some details at the tail end of this of the products and stuff that we use. So starting out with, we added, because we wanted to hang this sound baffle blanket, whatever you want to call it, we did add, I think this is a Van Wife shelf. There isn't enough room in the Next to fit the rod in here, so you'll have to remember, don't even bother ordering that because it gets just a little too tight back in the corner here. But what we did do, what I did, is I hung this with little loops. You can see, I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And these are simply little hooks from a cabinet hardware that you can pick up any big store stop place. So I just drilled holes, screwed those in, and then I measured out where I wanted the loops. So I brought it up this way and that closes off, and I sewed that over. Now the blanket itself is, if I recall, is about 64 inches wide and 67 inches tall. Confirm that, obviously. I would have gone a little bit wider, maybe 3 or 4 inches wider than it measures, and maybe an inch taller. Wider because, as you can see, when the seats are in their back position, it pushes against it. I found this to be a convenient place to put a little piece of Velcro. So inside this sound blanket, or baffle, is the same insulation used in the walls, which is 3M Thinsulate 600, whatever number it is. I'll show that later. On the outside of it is simply 1.5 or 1.9 ounce uncoated nylon that I got from Quest Outfitters. And that proved to be super lightweight. And what we do then with this blanket is, when we take it off after we're traveled somewhere, we just simply turn the seats around for the evening and we throw it down on the floor and just leave it sit there. So those two things are the first things we did. We had to add the shelf in order to get something to hang the blanket on, and then we used the shelf for added storage. Now on the shelf itself, it's aluminum and it's a little tinny sounding. I added some sound skins material to dampen that sound. I did not cover the whole thing. I covered about the amount that covers an area where I put a real lightweight plastic place for boots. You can buy at any hardware store. And that's where our boots will go, sitting on top of that, and that dampens that sound. Ideally, the headliner itself would have been removed and insulated, but with the build out, you can't get at all of the screws in order to do that. So basically you have to hang the shelf below that and get the dampening through that. But a better solution would certainly be to be able to simply soundproof the headliner under the headliner as the production is underway. So that's, and I would say that of all the things I did, the baffle is probably the most important. It really kills the sound in the back of the rig to a high degree. And frankly, we don't drive more than 5 miles without it hung up, or it drives us crazy once we had it in there. Now the next thing had done, are the doors. And the door panels, there's a simple video that takes these off. I actually hired somebody to do it this time around, but I've done it before myself. And the reason I didn't want to bother with it, but it's actually, I watched the guy do it. It's pretty simple. And like I said, there's a video for it. On the inside of this plastic panel, I put some matting material. It's about a 1/2 inch thick, same stuff as I used on the floor here. And again, I'll show that later on, the products. And then on the back side, or on the wall in here, I use some kill mat sound dampening material. And I'll show that product as well later. Now, you can even hear now how less pingy this sounds than when it's not in there. Doing the doors is extremely important. On the floors, which is actually, and none of these things are particularly hard. You can do them yourself one at a time. On the floors, they've got these coverings, both sides, you can see it. And the only thing you have to take out really are these bolts here, or screws. This plate pops off. This plate pops off. And you can pull this whole mat out. This mat goes around the corner into the back. The other one is a bit smaller and it goes out the driver's side door. Same principle. I simply took these things out, laid them over, flipped them over, laid the mat over the top of them, cut it out to the size I wanted and put it back in. I did not put any material under here because it was a little difficult to, given the space for these things to tighten down again once I had, this is where the jack is. I will probably put some sound or kill mat underneath here just to deaden the sound a little bit, but there isn't enough room, I don't think, for the matting material. Now on the back here, move this out of the way for a second here. So there's these two pieces, this piece, and this piece can just pop off. I put material under there. You also have to take out these screws here, no big deal. The trickiest part of this whole removal is this, again, is one big piece that goes around the corner, is getting it away from the parking brake. And most critical of all is there's a wire here that connects to this. Don't mess with that wire, because if it's cut accidentally or pulled, this brake won't work and the engine won't, or the engine probably won't start without it. And what I did, this is kind of a tight fit here where it pulls out. You got to kind of pull this up and out, and that'll slip through. I actually cut this wider when I put it back in because I didn't want to screw around with this mechanism, so I just gave myself a little more space. And you can see how these two overlap, and you really can't tell at all that I put this matte material underneath, which I'll show you later. So now we have the baffle in place, we've got the doors, we've got the area up here, the shelf in place and somewhat sound dampened, and so forth. So those are some of the key things. Now I'm going to step outside and show you what I did under the hood. So under the hood, the opportunities start to get a little bit less, but I still think it's important to try to take away, it's a game of inches, not of feet, and everything you can do to dampen the sounds are going to be an improved experience. What I did then is I pulled these things out one at a time, and I'll show you this later, a little tool that you can use for this. I was fortunate that I did not screw up any of these as I pulled them out. And if you break them, you can replace them, but they're like $11 a piece from Mercedes-Benz. As you can see, I got some of the kill mats sticking out here. It greatly improved. I got a little bit placed in here, just in spots. You don't have to cover the whole thing by any stretch, but in logical places that you can get. I also put a little sliver in here. It's kind of hard to see, but I put a piece in here as far as I could reach. It's maybe, oh, I don't know, 5 inches wide by a foot long or so, and I snuck that in there. This was the part that isn't great as far as the tinniness, but there's nothing I can do about that because there's no other access. I also tried to do a little bit on the fenders in this space. You can maybe see it down in here. you can get to the back side of the fender, and it's just plastic in that case. And on this side, I did a little bit too. You can see a little bit of that mat down here. And I got some of the fender from below in this area. And then I also, just for the sake of argument, put a little on this skid plate as well, just to get the tinniness out of there. And again, the whole idea in the engine compartment is to diminish the sound from the engine. Now that I have all of that done, the overall road noise is considerably reduced. Percentage-wise, I can't tell you, but it's much more enjoyable to be driving this thing than it was without it. You can easily talk between yourselves. You can listen to actual music without having the volume at high and so forth. So there's no doubt that it's a high value, at least to my wife and I. But, you know, it's probably still not going to be to the level of certainly a luxury SUV or something like that. But it's definitely a great improvement, and we wouldn't have bought this without having this in mind when we decided to do it. So that's just the essence of what we're looking at here. And okay, here's some more details. And again, none of this is particularly difficult if you're reasonably handy and want to take the time to do it. So starting with the driver's side, I took that mat off, removing those screws on this side. And then I added the kill mat, particularly over the battery space. They had some already in place here, so you can see that in place. But I added some to just sound good, and that is all. I could not get underneath the seat on this side very well. There's too much going on there. But I didn't show it much on the other side, I don't think. But I did there's a little hatch on the other side you'll see in the video. And you can open that up and easily put in the kill mat on the floor, as well as some of the sound dampening mat that I'll show you in a little while here as well, just to cover that space. Just be cautious that there are a few wires underneath there you have to look out for. So that's pretty much what I did here, and then I just simply cut that matting out to fit all of this space underneath. Here again is another look from the opposite side now. As you can see, this area gets more difficult because of the jack and tools in there, but I did get it all covered here, and you can see I've got kill mat here, factory stuff here, some in here that helps, and then I covered this whole space with this mat. Again, this is from between the seats now, obviously. I pulled that out, and you can see the mat sitting underneath here, and it's elevated now because this isn't in place, but as you'll see, as you saw earlier, it lays in there well. Here's that little spot you have to watch out for. Just make sure you don't mess around with that, and you don't mess around with these wires. This is actually a Noovo wire that runs through this space, and just watch out for that. I think it has something to do with air compressor wiring, or who knows what it is, but just watch out for it. Now you can see this is all one piece, and I've laid this all in here, again being careful with these spaces, and I just laid it in there covering the whole floor, and you can see it's about a ½ inch thick. I kept this color, it's white on the other side and this on the top. I kept that on the top. Here it is from here, and now you just simply lay that plate back in, snap it into this spot here, and then just screw these other spots. This is where you can get underneath. I didn't take pictures of it. You just pop that open, and you get plenty of room to get underneath to do under the seat, which frankly is fairly important and often overlooked. I will go back and add some kill mat on this space in here. The doors, this is with the panel off. I'll show a video, place you can watch a YouTube video coming up here. But once you get that door panel off, there's a few wires you have to disconnect, and then there's a little tricky spot where you have to disconnect the handle or something like that. Again, none of this is particularly difficult, so you don't sweat it, details too much. And this just peel this off carefully, and you reuse that, you put that back on. Keep in mind that you can cover on the back side of the panel, on this side of the plastic panel, you can cover the whole space pretty completely, and it still fits. Just make sure that you when you put it on, that you leave open these little spots where the snaps go back in. Here's what it looks like inside the door. There are some very modest dampening in here already. It's not very good, to be honest with you. But this is where the sound skins was placed on the side of the door. Now the sound skins that this guy used is similar to the kill mat on the door side. There's another product, there's two products on sound skins, as I understand. One is more of the butyl material that's just that in foil. And then there's another one that has other things, a little foam layer in there. On the door, on the inside, you could probably use either. He just used the kill mat style on this. And here's what it looks like when he's got this, they're the sound skins just right over the top of that all. And again, that dampens the metal part of the door. This is actually from our old rig, but the principles are all the same. You can see that I just filled in the behind the door completely as much as I could using a little, foam or spray on glue. I would reverse this. I would have the white on the inside and the other fabric face on the outside, and that's what we did on the next. Here again is the sound baffle, and again that's just sandwiched, Thinsulate sandwiched between two nylon. Certainly could do a different job and have more things. I sewed it in completely around the edges. You can actually sew those edges with a regular sewing machine. I found that when the Thinsulate comes packed, it's suctioned down, or it's flat, and it's easier to sew before it inflates itself over the few days. So once you decide to do it, it's easiest to do it right away. Your average sewing machine can get through that with some luck, but this is one product that person could have jobbed out and have somebody else sew it that has a more commercial approach. And Noovo itself could easily make these, or some aftermarket, but you can do it yourself as well. And again, that's just Thinsulate with, on both sides, in my case, black 1.9 ounce nylon uncoated. Here's the material that I used in the doors and on the floor, and you can see what it is. Ignore this, because that didn't have anything to do with the actual size. This is what I ended up buying, and I had extra. I suppose you could get by with this, but it'd be really tight, and I don't know that I'd risk it. Here's the Thinsulate that we used. Pretty much straightforward stuff, and it's a good product. Here's the kill mat, and again, the sound skins, it might be a little bit more expensive, basically the same stuff. It's just a butyl automotive sound deadener. Now be careful here though, this does not off gas. So you wanna make sure that you buy a more expensive product that doesn't off gas, and you'll be just fine. Here's a company, it's called Quest Outfitters. You can see up here, I suppose, maybe you can't a little bit, let me check that up. It's Quest Outfitters. I've been dealing with them for fabrics for decades, for outdoor gear and so forth. And they're a good outfit to work with, probably the cheapest prices. And this is the uncoated stuff that I bought for this particular use. And you can get several different colors, but you could get fancier with the covering if you want, but for our purposes, this is just fine. I also bought some webbing. I used 2-inch webbing on the top, and for those loops I used 1-inch webbing. There's various weights you can get. Mine is a mid-weight, I think, is what I actually ordered on the webbing, and that's relatively easy to sew. And I went with the loops because I wanted to pull that insulation as high as I could up. Here's how you can take the sprinter door panel off, and literally it takes about somebody that's done it before, like the guy that did it for me, took him about less than 7 or 8 minutes to pull it off. There's about 4 or 5 screws, four I think wire connections that are just easy connections, and then that mechanism that you have to use for unhooking the handle, and otherwise you're good to go. Now to underneath the hood, this part, I used this tool, and I had gotten a set of these tools on Amazon years ago and used this particular one to pull these little clips out. So I pulled those clips out in each of these spots here, and I'll show that later. But under the hood, this is real tinny sounding. And you get a fair amount of engine noise from the Mercedes. On the Mercedes, I'd assume the Ram is the same. And interestingly, when we first got it and had none of the sound dampening in place, everything was noisy. And the engine and the tire noise was kind of a secondary thing. Now with all the soundproofing or dampening that I've done thus far in test drive, the engine and the tires are the things that most stand out, as it is in most vehicles. So it shows to me that we've already achieved quite a bit in this effort. Again, the same basic picture, and I think that's it on that. Essentially it. I hope it all works for you, and good luck with your soundproofing endeavor. And once again, we're real pleased with the results. It's never perfect in these things. They're a utility vehicle after all, but it's greatly improved and a much more enjoyable ride.